Launch day was an amazing feeling because in some ways it felt exactly like every sim that we've had with the countdown, and in other ways it was totally different. You could feel the rocket moving and breathing.
It's a roll out of a Soyuz vehicle.
I remember that. It was the second time for me to walk out. It's always a fantastic moment to connect with the people that are there for you to support your launch. It's always emotional to see all your friends and family there.
One unique aspect about our launch was that it involved the very first flight from a United Arab Emirates astronaut, Hazza Ali Al-Mansouri.
And then you're sitting in your rocket, and no matter how many times you do it,
There's the rocket going.
that acceleration, that moment of pure exhilarating speed is always a brand new emotion.
I actually sometimes had to remind myself it was for real, since we spend so much time in the simulators.
That's a Soyuz going into orbit.
This incredible photo Christina Koch took from the space station as we were approaching.
I'll never forget watching Jessica and Oleg and Hazza launch because we got an amazing show on their way up of the second stage and the big plume as it expanded up in the atmosphere.
There's a stage breaking away and then a Soyuz on approach to the ISS. It takes about 9 minutes to get into space, and then it takes about 6 hours, 4 orbits to rendezvous with the station.
And there it is.
When we arrive, we're arriving to friends, crewmates that we've trained with for many months before, so it's always a great reunion.
Best feeling ever is watching people come through the hatch.
I don't think I've ever smiled bigger than the smile I had on my face at that moment when I came through the hatch.
Coming into a place that we've heard so much about, learned so much about, and we're seeing it for the first time, it's hard to believe that you're really there.
It's important to understand that in order to spend 6 months in orbit or more, you need a lot of supplies, and that's why we have cargo vehicles that join us onto the space station.
We had a lot visit us during our time on board. I think I've lost track of the number of exactly how many we had, but it seemed like we had a new one every 4 to 6 weeks.
Everybody had a chance to catch one, and we had lots of cargo to unload.
And it brings a lot of work, a lot of experiments, and it keeps us very busy for the days and weeks after the arrival.
It's an all-day activity, even though the capture itself is just a few seconds long. And in retrospect, realizing that our mission was one of the ends of an era because we don't actually capture that many visiting vehicles anymore. We're kind of just down to Cygnus. We have the automated docking of SpaceX now and future HTVs.
And then after a couple of weeks or a couple of months, depending on the vehicle, we release it, and sometimes it lands or it burns in the atmosphere.
And it brings a lot of work, a lot of experiments, a lot of cargo, and it keeps us very busy for the days and weeks after the arrival.
The science that we did on board was incredible. So fortunate to be a part of that the amazing work we're doing both in technology development, human research.
And we had no lack of that on the space station, ranging from experiments looking at aspects of our physiology, like you see here, looking at various types of combustion processes and combustion experiments, material science, lots of different cell biology experiments and rodent research. You name it, there's every type of science being conducted up there. A lot of life science work in the life science glove box, looking at bone cells, muscle cells, different aspects of cell biology and physiology. And this was the veggie experiment. We were really excited to be taking care of something green and growing, and we even got to enjoy salads at the end of that experiment.
Well, I was just happy to eat some fresh salad.
And Drew gave us his lettuce, so that was a treat too.
Not a vegetable eater.
Of course, some of the science that we perform is also directly connected to technology, and the point is that we want to improve the technology on the ground, on the Earth, and for that we use our science.
This was a fun night. We got a call up late one night from Huntsville that there were some issues with the Polar, so Drew and I very quickly transferred all the science from one fridge that was having some issues to others, and it was a fun night.
Here we have experiments that are launched through the robotic arm into orbit.
Some examples of our combustion experiments there.
And here it's using the fur And here I'm working with a rack which performs the experiments on fluid physics. And it was an international cooperation where I was working with the University of Milan. It was really interesting.
Of course, Tango Lab, a really example of some of the commercial partnerships that we have together.
That's a view of the biofabrication facility, which we spent a lot of time with, doing some really interesting tissue engineering work, which one day may lead to growing and printing 3D organs that can be used for transplants back on Earth.
And this is me working on Cold Atoms Labs. Having done cryogenics work in the past was super awesome.
This is the ISS Experience camera, a 360-degree camera that we used inside the ISS.
It recorded things from all parts of our everyday lives to the experiments that we're doing.
Science.
During Expedition 61, we did a record number of spacewalks. We did 9 EVAs during our time on board in about a 4-month period.
Legend has it that if you add up all of the exact spacewalk time, it adds up to exactly 61 hours, if I remember correctly.
Every EVA, it's a different story. Every EVA is a different adventure. And for those who are performing it, it's certainly an experience of a lifetime.
These EVAs started right after I got on board, so we're very busy from the moment we arrived.
And Christina and Jessica performed the first all-woman EVA performed on the ISS. It was a historical moment, and they did a fantastic job.
That was really a special moment for Christina and myself. It was my first spacewalk ever, and of course that is the most noteworthy of all of them. And that meant a lot to Christina and myself as well, not certainly as a personal achievement for us, but really as paying tribute and an homage to all of the generations of women and other minorities that came before us that allowed us to be out there on that day.
And such a pinnacle, such a career culmination of everything you've learned and worked for, getting to take all those skills together and put them towards keeping the space station running at peak performance, going outside, doing the work to do that.
And it's hard to overstate the amount of firsts that were necessary in this series. First staging ever done in space, first tube cutting ever performed in space. So many tools developed specifically for these EVAs.
And Jessica and Christina drove the robotic arm in places where we had no camera views, and they had to rely on us painting a picture of where the robotic arm was to support the EVA. So it had many components in it that were very unique to this series.
We had to work together as a team very, very closely with each other, real time, and also with the ground teams. We would literally call to the ground and say, hey, we were thinking of this plan. It was literally down to the centimeter.
In the end, we were able to repair this incredible experiment that hopefully will bring a lot of new science to the Earth.
Of course, the most fun thing about space is the microgravity environment and being on board with your best friends and your crewmates.
Sometimes some of the most memorable and fun moments on board are just the elements of daily life, and living and working in microgravity all the time just gives people the sense of levity and playfulness. What was that maneuver, Luca?
There's a signature move.
That was my signature move to translate around.
We had these hydrophobic paddles on board. We got to have a little bit of fun experimenting with them, and so you can see it's just amazing how water behaves in space.
Of course, working out is a major part of our day. We have 2.5 hours every day to stay in shape, and it's important because of the negative effects of microgravity on the human physiology. Our incredible machines help us stay in shape, and we certainly enjoy using them.
The engineering behind these devices, which help keep us healthy and physically fit, is truly incredible. All of us have commented on how effective, and we enjoy doing these workouts.
And you can see, of course, we run on the wall on T2.
I was fortunate enough to get some surprises in a visiting vehicle, and we even were able to make a charcuterie board during our expedition.
We bugged the ground teams enough that they finally figured out a way to send cheese to space.
And fresh fruit from Japan.
This was awesome fresh fruit on an HTV vehicle from JAXA.
Sometimes playing the guitar can be a relaxing moment for the player, but everybody else maybe has something to say about that.
Even washing your hair in space is more fun.
I wouldn't know anything about that.
A lot of people ask about toothbrushing in space. It's pretty much the same, actually. You just have to find somewhere to spit your toothpaste out.
When you spend 9 months on the space station, you're sure to be there for your birthday and several others.
This little robot called AstroPi, he was able to feel me blowing into the candle and then turn it off and say happy birthday.
And we serenaded the ground team for Christmas.
We sang Happy Christmas and Feliz Navidad.
Christmas was so incredible on board the space station, and it really, really felt like a family that day.
We did a lot of group hugs. Friday hug, the huggle. Friday huggle.
A lot of people ask me if I was prepared for every aspect of my mission in space, and I always say yes, I was completely prepared, but the one thing I was not prepared for was how incredible it was going to be to watch both the Earth and the night sky from the space station. I knew it was going to be amazing, but no one can prepare you for how amazing it really is.
When we have any free time, you'll find one of us at least in the cupola, enjoying the incredible views of our planet, and also taking photographs for science as well. We actually have quite a powerful data set of Earth observation photos where we can help add to the data sets of scientists looking at things like glacial retreat. I love seeing lightning at night. That was the flashes that you see among the city lights and the night views.
You know, we did a lot of nighttime lapses during our time, especially towards the end there. And I'm glad we captured those because we got some great shots.
Incredible views.
Every time you look down on Earth, different continents look completely different. And there's so many little clues even about how the ecosystem contributes to culture and the different industries that are important in a country. It's really amazing.
Unfortunately, there comes a time when the mission ends and we have to get ready to head home.
In the weeks before we left, I would spend time thinking about things like what it would feel like to walk. And I would actually try and imagine that feeling of holding your body weight up and pressure on your feet and just walking on Earth. And I would try to think about what would it really feel like to smell the smells of Earth, to smell plants, and to have a breeze on your face. And I really almost lost touch of those things so much that I had to really try hard to imagine what they would feel like.
The ride home is a little bit more dynamic than the ride up.
It certainly was, and I know for me, I was not ready to leave. I would have much rather stayed up there on board for much longer, but it was time for our vehicle to leave, so we had to get in.
As we're coming back down, the outside of the spacecraft heats up so much, coming in at 25 Mach, that melting pieces of the spacecraft thermal cover start flying by the window. It's really spectacular.
When those parachutes open, you feel like you're in a washing machine being thrown in every direction possible.
And then there is the thump of the landing. And if you're lucky and land up right side up, it's just one landing. But if you're sideways, it feels like it's multiple landings.
I remember looking out and seeing so many people. I hadn't seen that many people in a long time, and I was just absolutely the happiest I could ever imagine being. To see familiar faces was unreal.
These guys were all lucky enough to land right side up, but you'll see when you see Drew and I landing that we were on our side, so we were hanging there for a while before they pulled us out.
But I felt like I was upside down initially and then rolled upside down again.
I'd spent the entire last 7 months with Drew, and then he was whisked away from me as soon as we landed.